From the World Press Photo headquarters in Amsterdam, welcome to this talk show about visual stories. My name is Aldith Hunkar, global freestyle multimedia journalist, your moderator for this event. Now do join us with your questions and your comments. Feel free to post them in the event chat section, and we will get to them at the end of the program. So pictures can have different purposes. They can be made to convey information, they can be made to incite action, and they can be made as beautiful objects, or they can be made to do all of those things. We read written stories all the time, but we hardly ever realize that we also read visual stories. Behind each visual story on the website and in the exhibition, there's a long journey that starts with an idea and moves through execution to display. A large number of decisions have to be taken by individuals and organizations for these stories to be visible to you. And together, these stages in the journey reinforce the understanding of photography and digital stories as a social construction, producing visual representations of the world. Today, we will take a very special look behind the scenes, a part of that journey. I will be joined today by the jury chair for Digital Storytelling Contest, Muyi Xiao, who is a reporter and a video producer in the New York Times investigations team, where she combines traditional reporting with advanced digital forensics. Sounds really exciting to me. And we're also joined by general jury member of the photo contest, Kevin W.Y. Lee, who is the founder of Invisible Photographer Asia, an influential platform for photography and visual arts in Asia. So welcome to the both of you. Thank you for all the work you're doing behind the scenes and of course for being made available today to join this event. How are you feeling today in your part of the world? Muyi.
I'm feeling good. It's a little bit early here in New York, but I'm very excited about the event.
Yes. And how about you, Kevin?
I'm good. I've got my afternoon coffee ready for the talk we're going to have.
Yes. And we just passed the lunch hour, so that shows the way that we are globally in this event today. So let's take it step by step so that we can all get a feeling for what goes on behind the scenes of an event like this. First of all, the procedure. Muyi, there are two different contests, digital storytelling contest and the photo contest. What would you say is the difference between the two?
So the photo contest is, awarding and celebrating the best in still images, either is single images or photo stories. But the digital storytelling contest is taking a look at visual journalism that is not still images, which includes videos and interactive packages.
Yeah. So, and Kevin, in distinguishing between the two, is the work as a juror very different, whether it's about still images or about, moving images? Does that change the way you do your work?
Yeah, I guess I'm sure it does. I'm not on the interactive and video sort of jury, but I have dabbled in that sort of work, and I think each medium, whether it's the moving image or the interactive image and the still image, there's a different sense that the work emotes. I think a lot of it has to do with timing and pacing as well. Because we are talking about one image which is frozen, as opposed to which sort of defines a specific moment, while as the interactive, the digital, the video, there's a lot more moments around that moment. So it's different in that sort of sense. If I can just briefly summarize, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Muyi, does that make it easier? What Kevin just describes, that moving image, you have choice between what comes, and it's a package really. Does it make it easier to judge that as opposed to still?
I wouldn't say it's easier. I would just say they are different. Like Kevin said, both of the contest, we are looking at good quality work, and also the work that shows great journalistic value. We're looking at work that talks about either very important story or underreported story that people haven't heard about. And in terms of the skill, like how skillful production is, there is when you look at photos, there is one way to judge if a photo, how good it looks and how skillful it looks, if it captures the most important moments. But when you look at interactives and video is another set of aspects that you judge if this production is skillful, because videos would involve like sounds and cinematography and editing, pacing, and interactives. They is hugely dependent on design, and sometimes also has sounds, and especially interactives. Sometimes like the package can get very large scale. It contains a lot of information. So we'll be looking at if the presentation of the content makes sense. So yeah, I think there are just like different aspects involved when we look at different formats of medium.
Yeah. We'll try to get into some of them. Yes, Kevin. Yes.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I can add is that with the interactive and digital format, right? Every year it's changing, it's evolving, because it has to be current. Technology, it's based on technology. So technology is ever evolving. Like 6 months down the road, a certain technology used to make some things interactive is outdated. So I guess the digital jury has got to keep up with the times every year. So that's one of the main differences as well.
Yes.
Very good point. Yes. One thing we're looking at is that if a work is pushing boundaries, we're always in the search for innovative storytelling.
Yes. I wonder if there's an end to that, but we might get into that later. In the meantime, I'd like to remind the people watching us from all over the globe that your questions and your comments are very welcome in the event chat area here on Blue Jeans. Just start writing your questions to my two guests, and we'll get back to them later. So take us through the steps from beginning to end, if you will, Muyi. We heard yesterday that 75,000, maybe even 80,000 submissions were there this year. So how do you get from those submissions to a short list and finally to the winners? What's the process?
Okay, I think I'll just talk about the digital storytelling contest because I'm not involved in the photo one, and I'm sure it's very different. And also the number of submissions. It's the digital storytelling ones is much less than the photo because photo is single images. People can submit a lot. So in the digital storytelling contest, where we got 335 entries, and which includes 149 in short video category, and 102 in long video category, and 84 in interactives. So I'm sure the number is less than the still image ones. And the jury members went through 4 rounds of judging process. The first round we would cut from the total number of submissions to around 20 or so in each categories, and then the following 2 rounds, the second round and third round, we would narrow them down. So basically, after the third round, we would have like the nominees. The fourth round is just like discussing, different prize and like different interactives. We're not ranking them, so we're just like deciding what is the most distinguished character we want to award for this project. So I would say the first round is the most, I would think, competitive in a way, because you are doing the biggest cuts. And if a work has passed first round, then in the following round, it will definitely get more chance to be discussed. Because the first round we watch. The length that the time we spend on each work is less. For shorts, it's like 1 or 2 minutes. For long form video, is longer. So it's very important. Actually, it's a very good tip. Very important for a video work to open strongly.
Strong opening, yes.
Strong opening, yeah. I mean, if you only have a strong opening but nothing else, that won't survive
No,
the
no, no,
photo
of course,
count.
no.
But
No,
it
but
will help
you need to
through.
capture your attention. That's what you're saying
For
with
sure,
with
for sure.
your first couple of minutes. Kevin, does that the same apply to still? I mean, is it the same sort of process? And also, how do you choose as a jury on what to focus within all those entries?
Well, fortunately, the photo contest part of the photo part of the contest from the World Press Photo, the World Press Photo has been doing it for a very, very, very long time. I mean, it started with the photo category, so they've worked out a lot of kinks and nooks and kind of like got a system going. And I think you have to because, if I remember correctly, it's like tens of thousands of entries that are submitted this particular year.
Yes.
So ours is a bit different because there's so many entries, you need a lot more judges. So there's 2 rounds of judging. The first round is comprised of a specialist jury, which looks at filtering or going through all the entries of each category. So the specialist jury is come from the field, like for example, sports, general news, nature. So they looked at all of that from their specific expertise.
Mm-hmm.
So from that large pool, they do the first round of culling. And I think they did this year's specialist jury did a wonderful job. And I don't know how many there were, but there were tons as well of jurors. And then it comes to us, which is the general jury. So I was part of, I think there were six of us, which are all from very specific regions. And then we look at the shortlist, and then from there, we debate, and then we pick what you see that was announced as winners yesterday.
Right. But based on what? I mean, I know that all of these things are also linked to current events. I know that every year maybe tastes would change or priorities would change. So my question actually is, how do you choose on what to focus within your small group of general jurors?
This year I felt the World Press Photo picked one of the most diverse jury panel that I know of that I can remember. So they both in geography and gender. So they bring their expertise and their sort of experience to the table. I'm sure everyone, all my fellow jury members from Russia, all the way from Nayantara in Nepal to Kathy in US, they may articulate how they judge, in their own sort of way. But for me, and I think in some ways, it'll reflect most of my fellow jury members as well.
Yeah.
First of all, when we look at the entries, we don't be given much information, right? So we are basically looking at, what's in front of us in terms of stories and images.
Without knowing any backgrounds, is that what you're saying?
Well, we get like synopsis and all that, but we don't know, who made the images and so forth. Mm-hmm. So the first thing one tends to look at is the craft, because we're talking about visual stories. Craft has to be something that comes out. Then after the craft, once it passed that, then we look at the story or the point of the story, and then we all debate. And then of course, one of the third thing that I personally look at, and I think the other judges as well, is how rigorous the work has been produced. So it's basically three things.
How what?
How rigorous
Yes.
the photographer has pursued the work. So if I could just say, it's 3 things: it's craft, it's the story, and it's the rigor. In very sort of in a summary.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that would be one of the criteria. So that's something I'm learning today. Muyi, I know that being a juror is very hard work, because my question to you is, how can you compare totally different visuals to each other and pick a winner?
It is very hard, especially.
Yes.
I mean, thankfully we have 3 different categories, so we don't really have to compare like video to interactive, because that would be like impossible. But even within even just among short videos, there is 3 minutes video that is very newsy, punchy, and to 10 minutes video, because the limits of short category is 10 minutes. That just the length of video would make this video look very different. But so the juries are, when we are looking at submissions in one specific category, we are essentially still looking at some most important traits of the work, like what Kevin said. Actually, all the points that he just mentioned apply to digital storytelling context as well. And it's very, very interesting you use the word rigorous. We also talk about how much commitment we can see from the filmmaker and the author of the interactives, the commitment they show to the work. And another thing that it is very important to us, video and interactives, they are a little bit different from photo. It always involves sometimes a big team. Actually, having a big team, having more resources does make a difference in terms of the production output. So our juries, we keep that in our mind all the time, because if you are only looking at production quality, it's always going to be the big newsroom swing, and we don't want that.
Where the money is, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So sometimes even a shaky video could be a winner. That's what you're saying. So I guess we know. Yes. So we now have some insight into the process that you've been going through the past months to come to these winners. In the meantime, I'm seeing people saying hi from the Netherlands, from Hong Kong, and from Switzerland. Hello, Roberto, a guest in Hong Kong, and Tara, welcome to the program. Remember to write your questions and your comments to my two guests in the same area where you are now, and we'll get back to them later. So let's dive a little bit deeper, Muyi and Kevin, into the winning stories now, and ask ourselves why these visual stories were selected as the 4 headline winners. Let's start in general. What is it you look for when you're reviewing an image? What is it that captures your attention? Kevin?
Well, when I first got invited to judge the contest this year, I was very aware, what an unprecedented year 2020 was, with COVID hitting, all over the world and affecting basically everyone in the world. So that was a very critical story that I think, will come out. And I think it was important to mark that, because, like I was having some discussions with some of my fellow jury during the discussions, was that 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, people are going to look back at this time, So it was important to actually take note of the stories that were coming out. But also on the flip side, it was important also to consider the other stories that are still ongoing,
Yeah.
So I think one of the main reasons, or the going into this process, we had that in mind. Yeah, I forgot what the question was. Sorry.
No, I'm trying to find out when you see an image. Can you explain to us what is it that catches your attention? If you got 5 images next to each other, what will catch your attention?
Well, okay. Speaking in reference to the winner, maybe let's talk about the stories, right? The story that won. One of the things that I really look out for is, do I learn something from this work? And to be honest, the winning work that won Story of the Year, I can honestly say that I learned something.
Yes.
That is one.
What did you learn from it?
I didn't. I was totally unaware of the in vitro fertilization. I'm gonna just refer to my notes here. The whole smuggling of the sperm.
Of sperm, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was something that was totally foreign to me.
New to you, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
and I think
you're talking about the Habibi
yes, yes,
series by Antonio Facilongo, yes?
yeah,
And
and
so,
and specific to that story, it's very difficult to tell a story that has been told so many times before and show something new. And I think uh, Antonio did a fabulous job.
yes, he did. So that immediately caught your attention, as you're saying, because it taught you something new.
Yeah,
Is that something you can relate to, Muyi, when it comes to interactive and video? Does it work the same for you? Is it something new that captures your attention?
Mm, something new definitely would capture our
Hmm.
attention. Not sure only half that would win first prize. But I mean, if we're looking at the winning project, for example, the interactive of the year, reconstructing 7 days of protest in Minneapolis after George Floyd's death. So
Hmm.
this one, the reason it stood out immediately to us is how innovative it is, how unprecedented this format of work is. If you go take a look at this project, it's essentially, this design immediately captured our attention. It is a whole page that chronicled 147 live videos
yeah,
that people just at the scene, not professional journalists, just people at the scene, at the protest scene, captured
Hmm.
of the 7 days protest, anti-racism, and anti-police brutality protest in
Yes.
Minneapolis.
So it's the
And
fact that it's a timeline that puts us day to day, hour by hour in the subject. That's what's caught your that's what caught your attention.
Yeah, and also it
Hmm.
provides very, by showing the density of the videos at one time spot, and also providing context. It gives like a very deep level of clarity of the event. Because when people talking about the 7 days protest of the in Minneapolis, it's really hard. Like some incidents stood out than others, and it's really hard to kind of give this definitive review of the event. So this project did that. And also it is quite unprecedented, thinking about WordPress photo, we are usually historically awarding image makers. But here,
Hmm.
this project is the first time we're seeing one visual journalism work just using user generated work, that we're shifting away from just awarding image maker. We're also awarding image curators right now.
Yes. Do you think this is the start of a new trend? The way you're talking
For
about it,
sure.
I think you do. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Whatever makes journalism better, we're gonna take a deep look at it.
Yes. So I suppose that this is a project you really couldn't ignore. It just had to win.
In a way, yeah. That's why it got the interactive of the year.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. I'm curious, Kevin. The picture by Mads Nielsen, man hugging the older lady, all wrapped in plastic. Take me through your thought process when you were judging this picture.
okay. When I saw the image, I was immediately sort of struck by it, but there were obviously quite a lot of images of the COVID moment that came through the judging process. Of course, there was the other one from Indonesia as well, but this one really struck me, and I think a lot of my fellow sort of jury members sort of felt the same as well. Um, if I look at it right, if you look at this image, it almost looks like it was shot on a stage, with the dark sort of negative space, right? And a spotlight on the protagonist, which is, the two ladies, the old lady and the nurse
Mhm.
doing the hug, you know. And in some ways, this is it's not a very comfortable, clean image in the traditional sense. Um, it's a bit disorienting when you look at it first because all the plastic and all that. But
Yeah.
then once you get over that, there's so much to this image, and I really like image. I really appreciate work that has many doors for people to sort of enter and read. There were, when I look at this image, it memorializes the COVID moment, but it also shows not just the tragedy, but also the human sort of triumph
Yes, because this is
in this
actually,
challenge.
yes, actually, yesterday during the award ceremony, I did ask Mats Nielsen, the maker of this photo, I asked him why he thought that his picture won from all those thousands. And I guess what he said is the glimmer of hope in
Yeah.
really dark times. Is that
Yeah.
the way it works?
Yes, I think it's important that when we put an image forward as the image of the year, for example, that it speaks to a lot of people, and it speaks of hope. And if you look at this image here, if you stare closely at the rim of the plastic, it kind of, the symbol of wings sort of come through. And that symbol that symbol, is I think, universal symbol of sort of hope and flight, so it's always good to be hopeful.
It's very touching the way because now that you said wings, I can't see it without wings, and I hadn't seen them before. So it's interesting how you can look at stuff differently, isn't it? Yeah.
And this image talks about everything that everyone in the world went through during the COVID time: separation, demise, borders closing, longing, and of course the situation in Brazil, which this was taken, is reflected in many other places across the world. Yeah,
I hear you. Shortly going back to Muyi, I like to discuss the calling back from Wuhan production with you. We touched earlier, Muyi, on the aspect of sound being added to productions, and this is one that actually basically is based on sound, right?
Yes,
so,
exactly.
I'm kind of trying to find out how sound can take so much center stage when it's about visuals in a contest. Can you explain that?
Yes. So usually when we look at sounds, we look at, like we talk about how clean interview recording is, how the ambient sounds, the music choice, all that, right? Because it can help with pacing and clean recording of different audio in a video production definitely elevates the quality. There's a saying that a good quality of a video, if you have great sound, great sounds and not so great visual, your video will still look great. But if you have breathtaking visuals but crappy sound, that wouldn't work. So sound is very important. And in this work, so in this work is more special because not only it has like the interviews and music, whatever, it also like the central what's most revealing material in this whole work is the phone recording. It serves a reporting purpose. So this
Mm-hmm.
man, he has kept all the phone recording that he had with the emergency center where he called and couldn't get hospital spot for his parents who are very sick. The voice that you heard, like the slight annoyance you get from the person who received the call, and obviously she was like totally overwhelmed, and the desperate he had in his voice, and also his calls with his parents, especially I remember one on the day that his mom was died. Like he had this call with her mom, and her mom was like, but they were separated, and her mom like couldn't really, like what the sound that she made doesn't make any linguistic sense. Like she was totally already out of it. So at that moment it really punches your heart. And also the phone conversations he had with his uncle, with his other family member, because he and his wife also got infected after his parents died. And he wants to, send his daughter away because at that time, like, he doesn't know how his daughter gonna get affected. So he wanted to ask this family member help, but you can imagine, like, this family member is like not young, and taking in a kid that was just from a family that every member got infected is very risky. But he took her. But the conversation didn't really go that straightforward. There's back and forth. For example, the family member was like, how can I just lock her, because the father recommends just lock her in a small room. Like, he was basically begging him. But obviously you cannot. But still, in the end, he took her. That's just like a not easy decision that you make in a pandemic as the first epicenter of the world, when you have no idea what you are dealing with. So that is the great courage that you see in humanity. So yes, the sound of the is
exactly. I was going to ask you, what does this tell us about humanity? But you were already answering it, so maybe you can finish your thought.
Yeah. So this is just part, but also the most important thing that so a lot, like, several jury members cried several times after each round we viewed this work. And the thing that touches us the most is that it not only records the desperate moments of this family, of this man, it also talks about trauma, and talks about the how this trauma might last, because the team actually followed this family for quite some time. Right at the outbreak, and later when the outbreak in Wuhan eased. But you can see this trauma, like the pain still stays with the family, and you start to think, how they will feel. You wonder that, and I think this is a kind of long-lasting pain that is shared by a lot of people around the world. But because we are right in the middle of the pandemic, we're not really talking about the long-lasting trauma, the mental health enough. So that aspect really touches us. And you can see this is just a small team. It's not the best production out of all the work, but it touches us deeply. And we selected as the video of the year.
Yes, I understand that. Yes, I do. One more question that burns in my head to both of you. Kevin, let me start with you. Does politics come in any way during your process as a juror? I mean, can you escape from politics when you make your choices?
Well, politics is a very broad sort of word, right? I think I'll try and answer the question. I think well, there was a reason why we had the diverse jury panel that we had. There's one from our chair was Nayantara, who's from Nepal. So she's very connected with the world in South Asia, for example. I'm from Singapore. Mulugeta came from the African side of things. Kathy was from the US. Andre was from Russia, and Pilar, South America. So I think that in itself,
yes.
Yeah. So that in itself, to some extent, addresses some of the concerns one might have. Whenever there was a situation, for example, let's talk about US, because there was a lot of entries from US, and obviously there was a lot of work on the Black Lives Matter, and we all see that on the news. In my region, I see that on the news as well. But of course, that's very far from where I am. So my insight and my knowledge might be limited. So when it came to stories or certain sort of images that was about the Black Lives Matter, we would pose questions to Kathy, who's closer to where it happened. Yes. So she would fill us in, and then we would think about it, we would debate, and then move on. So likewise, for stories that were in the that were closer to where Andre was. So same thing, we would throw in
Same
questions, so forth.
Right.
Yes, and likewise in Asia, me and Nayantara would actually give the point of view, and then from there, it's ultimately it's up to the jury, each jury to base their own judgment on what they hear and what they feel is correct. So I think, does that answer your question?
In a way, I'm going to ask Muyi to elaborate on what you just said. Muyi, do you feel the same way when it comes to politics and the decisions you make as a jury?
Can I just ask, what do you mean by politics specific? Do you mean like the geopolitics or?
Well, yes,
geopolitics?
world politics. Does one subject get more attention than another because it's in the news, so to speak?
Got it. Okay. Yes. I think for this, the way we look at it is that because this is a visual journalism contest, and basically, essentially, we're going to determine if a work has journalistic value. But having deliver a news urgency is only one way to show journalistic value. To cover something that is underreported, that is out of news cycle, or to cover something that has happened 10 years ago, but this team still remembers it and do follow-up reporting, shows huge commitment, is still journalistic value. So yes, the urgency of something, of big events like the anti-racism and police brutality protests in the US, that's in the news, and the pandemic is more in the news, is important, but we are not just looking at that. We will be looking at things that people are not been talking about enough this year or ever, because they are very valuable too.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I would now like to give the floor to the people watching. There's a ton of questions coming in, and I have no idea what they are, so I'm just going to read them and pose them to you. Here's a question to you, Kevin. How do you go about judging the photos if a story behind the photo is unknown to you? Well, I suppose you did tell us some about that, but maybe you can elaborate a little. This is a question from Andrea, by the way. Go ahead.
Well, when we first encounter the story, of course, I would read the synopsis and then gather as much as I can based on what I already know. But of course, the World Press Photo team who backs us up, the jury process, are there to actually give us additional information about the context of the story, for example. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, there were judges that came from specific regions that also was on hand to sort of add more context as well, or give more insight. When there were specific questions, whether we felt we needed to clarify certain issues with the person that made the images, then we made a request to the team, and then they would contact the photographer, and then the photographer would provide additional information. So that was kind of the process of how we, judged.
How you deal with the stuff that you don't know all the details about. Yes. A question from the director of World Press Photo, Jumana. She'd like to know, did you have an idea of a statement that you as a jury wanted to make during coming into the process? Muyi, I'll give you that one from Jumana.
A statement, like if jury members have a statement?
Yes. That you wanted to make, starting out your process. Did you have a prefixed idea of where you wanted to end? This is how I'm reading the question.
I don't think we did, because I think being a jury, the whole judging process, for us, it's also adventure. We wanted to keep an open mind because we don't want to predetermine that we're gonna choose, like a story of a certain topic, or something like to kind of like limit our imagination, because sometimes we would encounter work that's really surprise us. And that's something we actually really welcome. I mean, if
Yes.
there's one thing that we definitely want is that we don't want to choose something that we don't want to choose something that choose a body of work selections that is only about two topics or that is only from one like very few regions. We want to be representative of different regions, different topics.
Yes. I think Jumana will be very happy with this answer. Let's move to Chiara Fabro's question. She's in the Canaries. I have a curiosity, she says, for the jurors. Does it happen after the selection process that you ask who the author is for an entry that did not get selected, but that you really liked? Who wants to take this question? Kevin?
Does it happen? I'm just trying to read the question to ask for
Yes.
that did not.
So an entry that did not get selected, does it sometimes happen that you are so interested in it that you want to do some background research on the person and on the tell us, give us an example, please.
We all asked. I think every jury member had certain favorites, that maybe sort of didn't go through the final sort of winners list, So but once that happened after all decisions have been made, and then we made a request that that particular work I really liked it. Can I have more details? So that was furnished to us. That was given to us.
And
but that was after. That was
afterwards. So what do you do with that information once you have it? I mean, the process is done. They're out of the selection. What do you do with that info?
Well, the least we can do is share the work, right? In our own sort of personal capacity. And I think some of my fellow jury members work for a publication, so they have intentions of publishing the work outside of the contest.
Yeah.
Or like, for example, Naintara runs a photo festival in Nepal. So there's a few names that she sort of jotted down that it might engage in the next edition of the festival in Kathmandu. So things like that, yeah.
So that means you can still put that kind of work in the spotlights, even if it's not selected for any awards. That's good to know. Yes. Question from Letizia Marquez. Letizia, since COVID-19 was pretty much all over the news in 2020, did you get an abnormally large amount of works about that, Muyi? An abnormally large, yes.
Yes, I would abnormal. Yes, comparing with any other, I was a jury member in 2019. We didn't see like a very consistent theme in that year, but this year there is, but not as much as I would imagine.
Oh, really?
And it's actually it differs in different category. For example, in short video category, there's more. But when you go into interactive and long format, where the storytelling has a tendency to more toward kind of like feature stories, you actually have less. I would say because COVID-19 is a very newsy topic, and visual journalists around the world, when they cover this, they cover it with kind of like a mindset of covering news, and that results in something more kind of like short formats, timely delivery, versus those who are making a 30 minutes long video, making a very big package. They want to discover things that is always always important kind of topic, instead of versus COVID-19, this very newsy and current topic.
Yes. Let me ask you a sneaky question that pops up while you were talking. If there had been no COVID and no Black Lives Matter in this past year, what would have come to the surface, according to you? That's a sneaky question, I know.
That's a very sneaky question. Well, as a journalist, every year there's always news. Like news never stop, because we're human, and we make things happen. So if it's not COVID, if it's not Black Lives Matter, it's gonna be something else.
It's gonna be something, yes. And from the selection of this year, can you say what would have come to the surface, or is that totally impossible?
even it's not Black Lives Matter, like there we have a lot of work that just focus on the protests, in the US, but also we are seeing an increasing number of the awareness of just general racial inequality that is not really talking about the protest, but more kind of so yes, I think even without the protest, like the awareness globally with of the racial inequality has been increasing. So even without the protest, I think we're still
it would have
more work
come.
talking
Yes.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. A question for Kevin from Karin Ellie Leeson. Do you look at the photos first, let them impact your perceptions without knowing who took them? Or where does the photographer themselves come into play in your selection process?
Well, I think it's because we're talking about visuals and visual stories and photographs, the photographs has to work in the first place. It goes back to what I talked about earlier, which is those 3 points, which is craft, story, and rigor, right? So you can't be a great storyteller but a very bad photographer. You might as well be a writer.
Yeah.
So we're still and work with words.
Yeah.
Because it's an inescapable fact that you need to be versed in the language of making images. So
In
yes,
the language of visuals.
yes,
Or in the language. Yes. Okay.
yeah. You need to at least be persuasive in the way you are making the images and in the way you are sequencing them to tell a particular point of view, right?
Yes.
So yes, that has to go through that, stage before
Yes.
we look at the others. Yeah.
Yeah. A quick look at the other questions. I believe we've actually answered what's left there, but I still want to thank the people for sending in their questions and for being a part of this program. And I'm afraid, is there one last thing that you would like to share with us, Muyi, before we round up? Short, some thought you might have for the future, for today, whatever.
For future, every year, please submit your work, because like you never know that we do like the aspect that the jury judges a work is very diverse and it's changing every year. This year that I participated in, comparing with 2019, another year I participated is already, it's different based on who are the juries, based on the theme that the public talk about in that year. So you never know. So please submit your work and never stop producing amazing visual journalism work.
Even if you don't think your work is great, or should you just try? What are you saying?
Yes.
Just try.
Yeah.
Okay, this opens doors to many people who might be thinking, I would like to be part of the contest, but I'm not sure if my work is worthy. Just try is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes.
Kevin, any last thought you want to share with us all?
Well, I just wanted to say that our picks for the photo of the year and the story of the year, I think, were fantastic picks, and it's a perfect balancing of, if I can say, time, because the single image, the photo by Mads, it's a spontaneous moment of our current situation, the COVID moment today, taken at a spontaneous moment, and it's a beautiful image that summarizes. But then on the other side, we have a BB, which is a long-term project that takes a lot of time to produce and a lot of effort. And it also is a story about a conflict that has been going on for the longest time as well. So in that sense, I feel that the two, the photo of the year and the story of the year, a perfect balance, and I feel that people should really consider that moving forward and in their submissions next year as well.
Yes. Yeah. You're being very consistent, because the rigor that you mentioned earlier is coming back in what you just said, Kevin. Yeah. Wonderful. I'd like to thank you both again for taking time today and for taking us through your thought process, and thank you for all the work that you've done and going through all these submissions. For the best of luck with your future endeavors, Muyi Xiao and Kevin Y. W.Y. Lee. Thank you so very much for joining me today. And I would also like to thank everybody who was watching and who participated in today's program. I know you've all learned a thing or two, as I did today. And the program will continue tomorrow. I will then be hosting the talk show about people power. But there's so much more going on. Just check out the website, worldpressphoto.org, for many, many pictures and other visuals, the program for tomorrow, and all else that is going on during this little festival that we are holding here from the heart of Amsterdam. And from now, from World Press Photo headquarters, it's goodbye.